And
Good morning.
and so yeah, so that'll help kind of focus.
All right. Well, why I find this area fascinating, again, this is Stanley Zamore, primary trainer, conflict resolution, neutral advocate for better conversations, better outcomes. I wanted to do some sort of conversation, um, venue, idea, space, time called toothpaste conversations. It's not just about being a professional neutral, being a mediator, but involved in communication or involved in just hard to have conversations with individuals, people representing entities, common interest, public interest, community interest, parents, co-parenting, all kinds of areas of life that as a professional neutral and primary trainer and qualified arbitrator for, over 20 years at this point, there are always within the body or within these industries, these hard to have conversations or underlying conversations that make up the reasonings that decisions are made, attitudes are had, and people move the way that they move. But people either find it difficult to have, or when they say something or have that dialogue or have that passion about that thing, is, oh my God, I said that thing. And it's like, well, you needed to say that thing. It needed to be put out there. We need to have these complex conversations in a respectful way, of course, but in a way that gets things heard, done, and moved on. So I have the pleasure of not only mediating with a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of professionals, but also the I think it's an honor to actually teach and instruct and to hopefully include people in this industry called becoming professional neutral. And the one such person is JulieAnn Rico. Had the pleasure of training with several years ago, and she just captured me. I have to say this: there is there is an interest in me. I gotta watch my words, make sure I say things properly. There's an interest in me when I see very experienced professionals that want to become neutrals. Because oftentimes people think, well, I've been to a mediation, I've been to some sort of town hall meeting where someone was the facilitator, or I was in court and there was either a judge, or I did do arbitration, or I want to be a neutral. I can do it too. And when they get into the field, they're like, this is nothing what I thought. There's so much more. So I find when I see a very seasoned attorney, a board certified education law attorney who actually was general counsel for a county, and now she obviously has a good heart, wants to get into it. I'm like, I want to see what happens here. I want to see how she takes those skill sets in being an attorney, which of course can happen, and being neutral, of course, can happen. In fact, a large percentage of neutrals are attorneys first, or are still advocating for individuals, and they are a mediator as well. I'm sorry, I'm saying a lot of times they get the lines crossed. A lot of things that are happening are straight up unethical, but they just feel, well, how else does it get done? There's a way to get it done. If you have conflict resolution skill sets, techniques that are only found truly in conflict resolution, and incorporate other things as well that you might have from your other professional lives. So I have the pleasure of having Miss JulieAnn Rico to be here to discuss education, to discuss advocacy in the neutral part of what education can be. And this is for parents. This is for people that are on the administrative side of things, people that are on the bureaucracy side. Well, let's get real, there is, and those that are maybe neutrals or want to be neutrals in this area. And Julie's going to tell us a little bit about herself, where she is currently, which I wish I was, as well as where she is right now in her path of being this neutral that also has an advocacy a passion. So, Julie.
So thank you so much, Stan. I likewise enjoyed meeting you and was very grateful to have you as a trainer. As you said, Was a longtime practitioner, more than 40 years in the practice of law with the Florida Bar. I've been general counsel to more than one large urban school district, most recently Palm Beach County. And I have had a lot of mediations. I have been involved in a lot of mediations, a lot of cases in various and sundry areas of the law in connection with my position as general counsel and also as a longtime practitioner in the practice of law. So, as Stan said, it's one thing to be a participant and an advocate. And particularly when you've been a longtime advocate, it's very hard to cross that line. So the training was absolutely incredible. The training took place during COVID times, and it was one of those activities that people cleaned out their garage and their sock drawer, and then some of us did something really great and spent a week with Stan. So I was very grateful to get certified, and he was an amazing leader and teacher because of what he was just talking about, and that is discerning those blurred lines and really asking people to stay on track with being a neutral rather than an advocate. And when you've done the advocacy a long time, it's really hard to get people back into that space. And so I was a little bit of a problem child during the training, but Stan got me there. Because he did really make that a focus. And I think that it is crucial that these kinds of conversations occur within the community. So, Stan, thank you so much for not only including me in this conversation, but for leading these kinds of conversations, particularly now in the times that we are in with so much controversy and conflict that goes on in our daily lives, but particularly in this education zone. As I said, I'm a Florida Bar certified education law specialist, and did get my certification as a mediator. And currently, I'm in private practice and represent a lot of and primarily firms, vendors that are trying to do or engaged in doing business with school districts. So I have stepped back from my mediation, any mediation work because of the neutrality issue. I mean, I think it's really sacred to be a neutral. And if you're being a neutral, you're a neutral. And so I think that, that's one thing I learned from Stan, and I'm grateful for it. But in the arena of the education space, I just want to comment a little bit about the putting in context these conversations, because as a longtime practitioner in the field of K-12 education, people often asked, well, it must be just kiddie law. I mean, it must be just simple stuff about, kids and nothing. Like, what do you guys possibly do over there? And I am here to tell you that as you turn on your TV for the past several years, K-12 public education across the nation has become the epicenter of these real world conversations that affect our everyday lives.
Oh,
So
yeah.
families, students, parents, religion, speech, um, uh, uh, advocacy in the community, parental
Gender,
rights,
gender.
all gender issues, employment issues. People don't realize that these conversations are happening at that local level because the local governmental education entity is oftentimes the largest public employer in the county. Palm Beach County alone has over 22,000 employees. It's bigger than the county government. They are the biggest spenders and contractors. They are spending a lot of taxpayer money. And who are the people who do business with the school board? Members of that community, right? So it's really important, in addition to all the student related stuff, in
Hold
addition
on.
to
Let
the
me
fact
pause
that
you.
we are dealing with kids.
Let me just make sure.
Yes.
I don't want to sound ignorant, but I am a lot of times and things. I don't claim to be Mr. Know-it-all, but let me make sure I wrap my head around for not just myself but for others too. Did you just say that Palm Beach County Education School Board has more employees, and not just employees? Sorry, not and and I'm thinking you're saying not only employees that are from Palm Beach, sorry, that work for Palm Beach School Board, but also the vendors, the contractors. I mean, the whole gambit is the largest employer than there
Yes.
are. Wow, that's a lot.
Their budget is over $4 billion. There are over 165,000 students, probably a lot more since I got that statistic. 185 schools. Um, they're just a lot of people. There's a lot going on in the school, in the school system. Okay. And that's why there's this huge conversation going on there, because it's kind of where it all starts. Everyone knows a story about think about it. Everyone knows a story about that's connected to your local school system. Either you had a friend, a relative, or somebody who's an employee there. You have a student, a relative, or somebody who's a student there. You did business with that district. A bus drove by your house and ran over your mailbox. I mean, something
They
has
do that?
happened that is something has happened that's connected you to that school district. And now these conversations about really important things that are affecting us fundamentally in this country, in our day-to-day lives, current lives, and affecting future, is happening right there at the local level. So I think that's where there's a lot of opportunity for unpacking these conversations. And there's also a lot of opportunity for people to have a better understanding about the environment so that they are better advocates, mediators, um, you know, uh, um, watchdogs, every kind of participation that you could think of. But primarily from my perspective as a general counsel, I've seen a lot of cases, I've handled a lot of cases, and I've seen a lot of situations where things go from, you know, a little bit of a whoopsie doodle into a full blown, lawsuit that takes headlines.
So hold on, pull back a little bit. So what's the
Yes.
legal definition of a whoopsie doodle?
My student parent has a complaint, calls the local school district office, calls their local school, wants to complain to the principal that their child was mistreated by another kid.
Bullied or mistreated or
Bullied. Well,
that was not
there's legal
or
definitions of bullying, as you know.
yeah, of course.
Um,
Maybe on the school bus, maybe something happened on the bus,
something.
and the driver didn't do anything about it, so they
Right.
complained to the administrator or whomever who also
Right.
puffed it along or was like,
Who
"Oh,
takes
boys will be
who
boys."
takes a deaf
Yeah.
ear.
Okay.
Who takes a deaf ear. And oftentimes these are situations where not that people in the school system don't care, because they really do, but when you're talking about 185,000 or 165,000 kids, you're hearing this, they can sometimes get desensitized to these little problems. And instead of taking it
Don't say
seriously,
little problems.
yes, because it's their little problem, but it's somebody's big problem, right?
There it is.
And
Okay.
so then that turns into escalation, escalation, escalation. And then, you know, it could come to the school board public meeting. It could turn into a lawsuit. It could turn into, a complaint to the Department of Education. It could become some sort of an investigation. It could become an investigation against a teacher or that bus driver, that employee. So you
So it
have
could be
these
something local. That could
multiple.
be it could be county, from county, it could be state, and from state it could get to federal level.
If a case, there are many cases that can be brought in on a state level, on an administrative level, or even on a federal level, and those include um, employment matters, any kind of student exceptional education matters, um, any kind of constitutional, sometimes regulatory issues. Um, there are just so many torts. I mean, you could have a child abuse case that ends up being on a federal level because it's one of those cases that are pattern and practice, repetitive. systemic breakdowns, and those can go to a federal level as a 1983 case. So don't want to do a CLE on education law, but just
Which
to
we should, which we're going to.
which we should and which we could, but to understand the complexity, and how things can move from an isolated incident to a big headline. The focus dealing with the neutral mediation is, how do we get cases like this resolved early on? How do we have those conversations? And how do we have the appropriate forum, including trained mediators, who can help resolve in a neutral way very emotionally packed issue, complex from a legal standpoint as well, but very emotionally charged issues, because they affect children. They affect fundamental rights with employees. They affect, just our very, very core of day to day. And so that's why they're very emotionally charged. I mean, I think you see that in the family
Of course.
dispute area, and this is like family law on steroids.
And I'm going to get deeper into why I want to have a conversation with you. So I'm just allowing you to pepper the ground of who you are first. But it's so interesting, because I had a conversation with someone, and and it was a little bit disheartening to me, because this person was very que sera, sera. I'm in a conversation with other neutrals and other professionals, and they were kind of like, there's another educator there, and this person was an educator on a higher level. And I think I may have talked to you about her at one point. She was the dean of a school, and how she was speaking about certain things. They were like, "Oh, well, that's just the way it is in that area. It's like it's just school stuff. It's no big deal." And we had a conversation about 5 minutes. I'm like, "Did you just hear what you just said? It's just school stuff. It's no big deal. It's elementary stuff. It's just grade school. It's not a big deal." And as you just stated, we're talking about the emotional connection you're going to have with a parent and their child, and how may not be taken, how they may not be treated equally, or not be or their concerns as a parent not taken seriously, and how things can escalate because of maybe of a systemic breakdown, or a breakdown in something, or not being informed, or not being allowed to be aware of what's our teaching is like going to be in that school. That could be that person's entire world. I mean, I have a number of children. I'm sure a lot of people that are listening to this will be listening to this, or even those like yourself, or others I know that have maybe one child. That's their everything. And when you say that one child is affected to where they can't even function, as they naturally would in their home life. They're not smiling, they're not connecting, they're not being who they are. When you get into, hey, Jimmy, Johnny, Mary, whoever, what's going on? And they don't speak about it, but you see that light gets taken away from them. That's not going to be emotional. That's not going to be, hey, let's put a stop to everything and handle my 9-year-old. What's going on? That's a very, very big problem. That could be bigger than an issue you might be having at work. And as you said, that can escalate to violence very quickly, as we've seen.
And I think that, there's a whole conversation, and maybe we can do another one of these talks on equity and access, and community access for particularly our South Florida communities, when it comes to navigating the system and opportunities, for employees as well as for students, families, et cetera, et cetera. That's a big, big, big conversation. But when you are in this mode of advocating for your child, or one is advocating for their child, the mediator, or the dispute resolution leader, because sometimes they do a more informal resolution at the school level, or try to. The sensitivity around families and family dynamics is really critical, because not all parents are going to walk in with, themselves intact. they are going to walk into this meeting 9 times out of 10 emotionally charged already. There may be family dysfunction going on that they are bringing to the table. So it's not just their student, right? There's a lot of
You're
other
killing me
things
right now. I
going
want
on,
to jump in so bad. Oh my God. You got
right? They can be dealing with, you know,
co-parenting issues, divorce,
parenting issues. They can
divorces,
be dealing with
mental health.
their own mental health. They can be dealing with, hunger they could be dealing with economic issues. They could be dealing with health issues. They can be dealing with a lot of things. And so that is being brought to the table in these resolution meetings where we're really supposed to be talking about, either the bullying, because there's a whole process about resolving, bullying issues, the exceptional student education rights. That's, a very big area of the law. You're dealing with students with special needs, and the advocacy around that. And there's a big mediation piece there. Um, Even in civil cases with torts, personal injury cases. So you're coming into the arena with a lot of baggage and a lot that needs to be dealt with. And look, mediators are human, right? So they could like or not like those parents. They could like or not like what those parents are asking for. They could like or not like how those parents treat their kid.
Hold on,
They could like or not like all of this, and that has to be put to the side, right, to do the neutral job.
it's funny.
And likewise for the sorry, but likewise for, the school district. You could like or not like those educators. You could think they're great or you could think they're terrible.
And you know what we didn't mention again, we gotta we're gonna have a part 2, 3, and 5 because we have to talk about like the language. The language, oh my God, we're talking about South Florida. Well, I'm in South Florida, you're across the sea in Italia, right? So we're talking about, but your home base and what you've done for decades was West Palm Beach, right? Palm Beach County, all throughout Florida and throughout the country, in various countries. What about when there's language barriers between the home and the school system or the school,
Right,
and maybe even that child being the primary translator between
right,
the home life and what they
right,
do within school. And I've seen that. And again, I haven't done the extensive education mediation that I wish I could have done, but I want to start doing that more. I want to, you and I discuss having a panel that does specifically this, and there is a way that can be done. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but that handles those issues. I've seen, being Caribbean American, Haitian American, myself, seeing those parents not know what's going on, not
right,
understand the rights, not understanding that thick packet every first week of school they
right.
have to sign off on, not understanding what they're signing off on, and that child, that 9-year-old being the translator for that parent where English may be a second or third language. So that's a
Right.
huge issue as well.
So it's not just the language, but it's the cultural barriers as well. And that's really important. As you know, and you've alluded to this, I have been living most of the time in Italy for the past almost 4 years, because my son was here in school. And so I was the parent who did not speak the language, who did not know how to navigate the system, and who did not understand a different educational system than what I was used to. So my expectations were different, my understanding was different, the school's expectations of me were different, and there was a language barrier. So I had to rely on my son, and I was general counsel of one of the largest school systems in the United States, and I felt like a complete idiot and very, very, very alone and very, very worried for my child and very frustrated that I wasn't doing the best for my child because I didn't really understand what was going on. So it's very I worn those shoes. And so I know how it is, and many parents are in that boat where they just need help navigating the system, and they don't have that support, experience or assistance. And so it's a very scary place for them to be. And so understanding that piece and making sure that at least there's some language supports helps a lot. But even with the language supports, there's a lot of different cultures in South Florida, as you know. So
Mhm.
someone can speak a Spanish, quote unquote, and it's not really their language. And it's certainly not, and it still may be a different culture than the person who's there to translate, because we do, the school districts do offer translators in a lot of these arenas, but there's still a lot of gaps. There are a lot of gaps there. And so when you're doing these mediations and trying to resolve these issues, there are a lot of factors to consider.
So let me
Um,
hone us back to just only about one or two things to have a conversation about. So because I will get lost in what you're saying, and we go on for 2 hours. I'm telling you, it can happen. So let me just zone in on what I want to focus
sure.
just for right now. So we know who you are for over 20 plus years, or sorry, how many? About, I don't know, 30, 40 years?
40.
40 plus years. You're doing the language education specialist. You're board certified in education law. Right now you're abroad, but you still have a lot of clients that are here dealing with school boards, and because they're vendors dealing with school boards issues. And what else have you done before we get into my 2 or 3 questions, my 2 or 3 focuses? What else? Who have you collaborated with on the municipal level, on the government side level, that people know that you have an impact with? Who else will you collaborate to help address issues as advocates on that side of the table? But again, now as a neutral, you're in the middle, of course, but for a while, a long time, decades, you were on that side. Who else have you collaborated with?
Right. So as general counsel, obviously I had a network of, well, I had a staff of fantastic lawyers, and there are a number of lawyers in the state that are adept in the area of education law. A lot of them work in-house for public school districts, and some work in private law firms, and they are basically hired as outside counsel. But I was really grateful to have an incredible staff of highly, highly, highly specialized attorneys that worked under me, and we still engaged some of the best legal advocates to represent us in certain high profile, particularly really high profile cases. Because as I said, oftentimes these matters start little, and then they grow legs, and they become headlines, and they become, huge matters that require a team to collaborate with and to work with. One is former Florida Bar President Gene Pettis did a lot of work for us. A
So
criminal
that was
defense.
between I know him for those years, what that 90 no 2013-ish to 2015, 16, right? I think he was the president of the Florida Bar at that time anyway. Right?
Yes, first African American Florida Bar President, and he, you know, not only a spectacular legal mind and really, really good at handling complex, high-profile cases, but he also had an eye toward this idea of trying to get cases resolved, trying to do the best thing for the parties, trying to, be sensitive to the community. And I think his work as Florida Bar President, really, he left a huge legacy with that kind of work.
Like
So
I reached out to him a few times. He didn't call me back, or text me back, or email me back. It's okay. But it definitely with his initiative. I just want to make sure I point that out to some people who don't know Eugene Pettis. I don't know him personally, but he has impacted me greatly, because although I was a mediator for quite some time in training, during his tenure as a Florida Bar President, he initiated a research study that
yes,
equity, and how the constituency, or the Floridians, and the lack of access to justice, or the feeling of the lack of access to justice. In fact, I have written that for so long, because a lot of my training is based on that. In fact, the very beginning of my training, I cover that research report that was initiated by the ABA and Florida as one of the states that participated in this access to justice, which, guess what, since then has morphed. There was a 5-year initiative that was set in place from 2013 to 16 was the research study on that. And from there, from 16 to 2021, there was a 5-year initiative where the Florida Bar changed, not changed, but appended and included a lot more diversity, equity, and a lot of other inclusion issues. And to tell lawyers, hey, lawyers, you do not have a monopoly of the law. We are here to benefit those that need us as a resource. We need to be better resources. And there's a initiative based on that, and mediation neutrals are one of those initiatives, which of course
Exactly.
so I was gung-ho, bananas, happy and crazy.
Well, I'll be happy to help broker that connection. He's one of our featured speakers for the continuing legal education conference that I'm doing in Tuscany here in October, along with another attorney, Scott Richardson, who's a criminal defense attorney, because believe it or not, these school districts are facing investigations on a statewide level, and sometimes even a federal level that involve investigating actions that could that are in and under the criminal statute. So there's a wide variety of need for collaborating with the judges in the within the juvenile and family court system. The Honorable Kathleen Kroll, the former Supreme Court Justice Barbara Pariente, were both extremely active and very, very, very collaborative with our school district, as one of the first to talk about focusing on preventing what they used to call the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline, so that we really focused on kids who were caught up in the juvenile justice or injustice system, as the case may be, and really trying to keep them out of the criminal segment of the judicial system, even as juveniles, and really support their educational process. So for instance, if the student found themselves suspended or even moved in a foster care situation, the judges would try to support a continuum of educational services at the home school instead of popping these kids around the county, start and stop month to month in different school systems without their siblings, without their neighborhood support, et cetera. So collaboration with outside counsel, collaboration with bar leaders, collaboration with the judicial, with the judges in the juvenile, family, and as I said, Justice Pariente, former Justice Pariente, was just a huge advocate for this work. So we had a lot of folks that were cognizant of the need to do this work, to focus on full service support within the community, because it's not just the school system alone. You've really got to have that network.
Let me ask you something. How come people don't know about, let me ask you this. What advocacy, what neutral services are available to parents and to those in the community to use? Like that's the first thing. So what resources are available for them?
Well, there are certain in the exceptional student education. We're talking about now students with disabilities. So that's that segment of issue where students have special needs, whether it's physical disabilities, learning disabilities of various kinds. And this is all under the federal law that provides rights to students for special education services for exceptional needs. And it's a very, very prescribed technical process. And that's why there are a lot of supports for parents to try to navigate that, both all the laws on the federal level, state level, administrative level, and school district level. So I would suggest.
How do you get access to that? If I've identified my child, my 7-year-old, 4-year-old, 10-year-old, finally, like, you know what, there's something that we're missing here. How do I go and get that assistance? Do I just go to the school directly? Yeah. Give me something here to help my child.
Yes. So you go to the school directly. Parents have the rights. There are parental rights information on each public school's website. They should be in multiple languages. There are resources from the Department of Education. So if you go on the Department of Education website, and there's a whole packet of information. I was downloading some of it that provides information to parents about navigating the system. There are advocacy groups out there. I can't spout off the names, but they are also listed on Department of Education websites. There are non-lawyer advocates that are trained to provide advocacy for parents to help navigate the system and obtain special services for their student.
Non-lawyer advocates. So
Non-lawyer advocates.
little
They're not
specialists.
neutrals. They're not mediators, but they're advocates.
Okay, and
Okay.
you're saying the school board or the federal, the Department of Education is supposed to have, I guess, state available resources based on some federal requirements that they must have.
They have the information about the steps and what's required, and they also have some resources available they've listed the names of some advocacy groups, parent advocacy groups that parents can then go look at for themselves and see if they can find an advocate to assist them. Then there are lawyers that specialize in this area of the law representing families.
And how do they find these lawyers? Do they just type in Google legal assistant?
Education, exceptional education attorney, or education law attorney.
Okay,
Something along those lines. But if you go onto the Department of Education website, they're not naming attorneys, but they are giving information about how to navigate the system and where there are some parental support advocacy groups, not part of the Department of Education, but private organizations that can provide some assistance to parents.
And I only ask that only because I've through my website, I have several websites I'm affiliated with, but one particular general, hey, I'm a mediator, I can help you website. Someone, I had a parent, it hasn't happened within the last few months, but I did have someone, definitely last year, at least 3 times, someone saying, I could tell they used Google Translator. Mrs. Zamora, need your help, child in school, need help, need lawyer, can you help me? I would like to hire. And I responded saying, as a mediator, there are rules of ethics that says I cannot formally, although I'm not engaged as a neutral with them, that's what the ethical rules state, as if you are a neutral with individuals, and as a neutral in the middle of a mediation or in the very beginning of the mediation, I identify these people need assistance. I cannot say, here's a group to go to. I'm not sure if people know that, but a mediator cannot do that if they're engaged as a neutral for the person. So before I was even engaged with them, so I'm not a neutral for them yet, I just refer to them, please contact your local school board and also the Department of Education and ask that question. And there should be some people, I said professionals, because again, I don't want them to say, oh, that mediator Stanley said. I don't ever want that.
Right. No, exactly. So there are some resources that are posted on the Florida Department of Education Bureau of Exceptional Education and Student Rights. There's a whole section there's a fact sheet on mediation. There's a fact sheet about how you complain, how you go about, asking for help about your student at the beginning, with your local school district, with your local school. There's forms that they provide to fill out, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
On
so mediation resources. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the interesting part about mediation in these exceptional student services cases is that once a case has been filed, whether it's filed in federal court or filed in an administrative, the Florida administrative system, where you have a Florida administrative law judge assigned, they can be in that venue.
You're saying there's an administrative judge. So are you saying that it's not going to be file a case for however many dollars for a county level case. It'll be in a specific administrative court that handles this.
Administrative, typically they go to an administrative law judge because the school systems have engaged by policy to utilize the Florida administrative law system for these cases. Okay.
And where is
then
that?
Permissible. Excuse me?
And where is that?
Where?
Yeah, I said like downtown. I walk downtown and I just say,
Oh, no. The hearing officers are located in various parts of the state, but the Florida administrative law system, there's a filing procedure, and the system assigns an administrative law judge, and they could be, a lot of them are located in Tallahassee, where the main state agency is for the Florida administrative law system. And then they have some local offices, and sometimes they'll send the hearing officer to the local area to hear the case. And a lot of it's just done online. And
just switch words here. Now you're using a word, hearing officer. Hearing officer is also going to be as if it will be the admin
instead of a judge.
Okay.
They're administrative law judges.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
I know this. I want to make sure that I'm clear with the terms that we're using, so people don't get lost in the verbiage. So
right, and that's why I'm saying it's, I don't want to get too bogged down into the entire
the minutia of it.
Litigation process, because it really is it's a whole practice area in and of itself. And I'm not, that's not my area of practice. I had staff to handle those cases. I do know a lot about it, but there's a lot of intricacies about the filing, and you could file in federal court as well. But the main point that I wanted to make about the mediation services is it's voluntary between the parties. So the parents and the school district that are in conflict about the types or nature of the services to be provided to the student can agree voluntarily to go to mediation to resolve these issues. And
is it pre-suit?
No, the case already has to be filed for the Department of Education to get involved.
Okay.
The Department of Education will assign a mediator on a round robin basis. They have a list of approved mediators. They have to be Florida certified, Florida Supreme Court certified mediators, right? And they are on the list. There is a list of them with Department of Education, and they will assign based on next person on the list. Until the assignment has been made, the parties are not allowed to contact the mediator. Not like in typical situations where we're trying to engage a mediator, the parties can contact the mediator and say, are you available? This is not allowed at this level. Okay. The Department of Education is in charge.
So just like the Florida statute that governs, excuse me, pre-suit mediations or mediations that are like let's say first property claim cases, DFS, the particular statute that handles condo and HOA claim cases, correct? There's also a section that handles education mediation. So that's going to be an administrative manner in which which mediators can be listed. Once they become Florida Supreme Court certified, they can be listed as neutrals that will be assigned cases through the Department of Education or that administrative arm, correct?
So the Florida Department of Education has its own list of mediators that they keep. Okay, they have to be circuit civil mediators, approved mediators. Not sure if family law mediators can be
I doubt that would,
approved.
I doubt that would, I think it would have to be circuit civil.
All right, but they have a web.
You have to be a Florida Supreme Court certified mediator, probably in the area of circuit civil, not county. That's perfectly fine.
Right.
Or dependency or appellate. Those are the 5 areas.
Right. So in that regard, if you go through the Department of Education, the Department of Education pays the mediator, not the parties.
So yeah,
that was
so
the
very
point I
similar
was.
to the other ones. Okay, very similar to the DFS, Department of Financial Services, that keeps their own list. Good.
Right.
I
Okay. So
yeah.
that's just important to know. Now, the parties at the local level or outside of the Florida DOE mediation process can always get together, pick a mediator, try to resolve their matter before, after, during litigation, as in any other kind of case. But if you are going to go through the Department of Education mediation services, the DOE picks the mediator and the DOE pays for it, which is, of benefit. Now, for mediators, the thing that's got to be at top of mind with these mediators is everything we just talked about before, about walking into a very emotionally charged, also very technical. There's a lot of technical stuff involved. So mediators should really be familiar with, and probably are if they're on the DOE list, with the laws and requirements of the exceptional student education law arena, because it's very particular. But they also should know that parents may appear unrepresented, or they can appear represented by these non-lawyer advocates that I mentioned before. So, it is,
So
it
how
is,
so let's jump into that. Mediators who want to or are education specific, educational law specific, or in that area. And again, we talk about exceptional student needs, but I would think that that would also just means the entire gamut of the educational system, not just special needs, the special nuances of exceptional students' wants and needs, and what the law allows for locally, federally, statewide, blah, 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 but also just the other needs, like if they're being bullied, or there's, titles, certain titles that might be needed too. What are the skill sets that you think a parent should be looking towards and for when they're saying, okay, well, I see that they selected a mediator. What should that mediator have? How does someone who wants to be a mediation specialist in education, what should they be looking towards, and what should they be looking towards to develop?
so I think mediators who want to work in this arena, or want to offer their services in this education arena, and I'm talking about public education here. I think that whether it's a torts case, a slip and fall, bus accident, car accident, sports accident, or it's a student related matter like bullying, because there's a process for resolving those cases. Student discipline, those are oftentimes litigated matters. Employment issues. Any mediator who comes into this arena should, number one, be familiar with the education law overlay, because in everything I just laid out, including contracts, construction, real estate, all of the operational business related areas.
It's not just, okay, went to law school for 3.5 years, worked for the Attorney General's office for X amount of years, or some of the state agency. I know agency administrative law stuff. So boom, I'm qualified for my 40-hour certification class.
Right.
The same.
There
Beyond
is
that, there should
there
be
is
understanding of a lot of other areas. For example, educational law. You said construction, potentially if it's a construction issue within vendors, or some students, student bullying, student affairs related court cases, blah blah. If it's a student health, sports related issue, correct? Okay, that's a lot.
Right. So I'm saying no one, well, not no one, but most of us are not experts in every single one of those areas I just suggested, but they are potentially an employment law specialist. And now I'm going into mediation, so I'm going to mediate employment law cases. But what I'm suggesting is there's a twist to the education case, the employment case that takes place in K-12 education, because there are specific laws,
CBAs,
right?
agreements,
and specific,
agreements.
context. So I think you should just familiarize yourself with the contextual area of the specialty that you're going to offer your services within in an educational setting. You should, from the legal standpoint, from the um, cultural, I'm going to talk about the mediation cultural aspect, everything we just talked about, to know and be aware and be very, very prepared to deal with emotional issues, political issues, issues that could become headlines overnight because of their nature to be very sensational. Um, and the multitude of parties involved, parents, educators, co-parents, all of the various input that comes into these cases. I think you
Various
should be
stakeholders.
various stakeholders. Thank you. Exactly. So I think you should be very well aware of that. So I think that the kind of person
Empathy.
developing those skills should be that person who could really hold the reins. You've got a team of horses that are, that could just run loose. You've got to be that person that can deal
Jimmy
with the
Cats.
atmosphere. Yeah. And to be that calming influence, to be that neutral, and to hold back your own judgment, because it's emotionally charged situation. And then lastly, I think that if one is a mediator interested in offering services to your local school district or the Department of Education, my suggestion would be to go to those general counsels, go to the risk manager of your local school board, go to the Department of Education, and make yourself known with your skill set, your experience, your background, what you bring to the table to hit on those 3 points that I just talked about: legal expertise, ability to apply the neutrality needed for these challenging mediation tables, and to be, sensitive to all the stakeholders.
There's so much. Oh my goodness.
There's a lot because we have so many context areas, so each one has its own twist. But I wanted to just really identify, the things that apply to all of those areas in terms of mediation. And I think that, um, those cases really need mediators who are going to be thoughtful and who are going to be patient enough to listen, because a lot of times the people, as in most of these cases, and I think
You
you
gotta vent. You
covered
gotta
that
vent.
really
You gotta put
well,
people out there.
they want to have their
First
day.
opportunity to have their day. So therefore,
Right.
so it's very similar. So I've trained at this point. I don't know how many people over. I mean, tens of thousands of people. Definitely, I know that for a fact. And one of the things that I try to emphasize and encourage participants, especially those that are embarking on becoming a neutral, because this conversation is all about how to make it better when you have a educational concern, whether it's an exceptional child situation, or sorry, an exceptional child learning situation, or just the bullying situation you're trying to deal with in school, and you want to use mediation, whether it's on that district level or privately, or eventually if it gets to the administrative level, what to look for if you're a parent, what to look for if you're a professional that wants to engage someone that you want to think could be a good mediator, and or if you're a mediator and want to get into it, how can I get into it? When I get these people that want to transition into becoming a mediator and I'm training them, oftentimes they may have the legal portion of it locked down pretty much comfortable enough, you know what I'm saying, that they are, like, as you said, the first part is legal expertise or legal awareness, legal law awareness in those various areas that might be important, right? What they seem to not have or need to more work on is that sensitivity area, the areas that where, again, I tell everyone, you can have subject matter expertise that does not make you a good mediator. It does not make you a good neutral at all. The basis and format and understanding and the baseline that you'll have is fantastic, of course. But unless you have a real profound and a very good barrier and hold on the empathetic nature of what mediation is, you're not going to move that ball as quickly or as effectively as you think you could, because now you have to browbeat people with what your expertise is of that area of law or understanding of that law to move them, as opposed to hearing them, listening to them, and letting them have a space to actually maybe not emote, but to evolve beyond what the conflict is now, and better yet, where they want to be. How do you do that? It's not going to be something about expertise. It's going to be, do you have a better understanding of how to impact people to where if they feel this is the place and the space that they have for them, and then evolve them into through different techniques of conflict resolution techniques, right? Then evolve them and move them or encourage them to move along the path of solution creation once you've had the opportunity to engage them in where they are with that conflict at that time. And that's hard because as you said, you may not have a represented party, represented family, and they are looking at you as that expert, and you have to create that balance and that neutrality. Be like, I'm here to assist you, not to advocate for you. So give me what you need so I can convey to them so they can understand you better, and I could have the interplay of finding solutions that both parties can agree to and hopefully leave satisfied. None of this. I can't stand this when I hear this from all the judges, the lawyers, the neutrals that don't practice, I think, proper mediation. I call it proper mediation. A satisfaction in the process. None of this, if you leave upset and you leave upset, it's a good mediation agreement. No, you don't have to both leave upset or mad or disgruntled or not feeling some type of way for it to be a good solution, a good resolution, a good agreement. Okay.
Right.
You have to leave at least satisfied. But go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's another aspect to this in this education arena that is so critical. Although this is a confidential process, right? There is still a very forward-facing, community-facing, public-facing aspect to so many of these cases, whether it's a school bus accident, whether it's a teacher said something to a student and it became investigated, said, verbal slur, etc. Whether it's a school safety issue, we've had all the tremendous school shooting matters. Whether it's an employment matter where someone has, violated the code of teacher ethics or even other employee ethics, and find themselves in an employee discipline matter. There is a very, very public piece to many, many, many of these cases, even if they're, tort cases where it's a student accident. One of the reasons is we have the concept of the standard of care in all of our legal proceedings, right? But when it comes to the school context, there is it's unwritten rule, but it's a very heightened standard of expectation where you send your kid to school in the morning, you really expect the kid to come home in one piece, not damaged emotionally, physically, or anything else. You go to work in the morning, you're a public servant, a public employee, you expect not to be harassed, you expect not to be assaulted. There's just a variety of areas where that standard of care is heightened because of the expectation that it's a school setting. It's not the county. County takes out your garbage. Schools take care of your kids.
Funny what you just said, and you know what? There's all this subtext that we never really get. I mean, I went to private Catholic school for most of my life. I didn't go to public school until I came to Florida as a teenager. And my mind was blown. I had a prejudice. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. I had a bias. I use the word bias. I had a bias when it came to public school versus private schools, and then there's levels of private schools, right? That I'm aware of, anyway, in my ignorance of what schools were. And what you just said is something that I don't think we voice. I know my parents, being Caribbeans, English as a second and third language, their way of dealing with me and my siblings going to school was, we're sending you. I mean, in Creole, it was like, they would actually say, the translation was, I'm sending you to the nun's house. That was the, if I say the word, those that speak Creole will understand it. But they said, they would use school in two different words. They would use school like, I'm sending you to school to behave, and then, or if I do something wrong, why are you embarrassing me in the nun's house?
Right. Right.
So for them,
Right.
it was a context of, I'm sending you to a place of worship, a place of that's going to teach you how to be a better person. That they really say that. So they of course they knew they had to rear their children, of course, but you're supposed to uphold that rearing when you're in school, and then while you're in school, they're going to increase that rearing and teach you to become a better person as well. So yes,
Right.
I know parents teachers specifically, one of those levels of community, one of those education occupations that don't get the respect that they deserve and need are teachers. And their teachers will like say, our job is not to raise your children. But for a lot of people, that's what they underlyingly, that's what
Right.
parents are thinking. Yes, I am asking you or expecting you to help raise my child. And back to what you said, while I'm tying it together, is there is this unwritten rule, this unwritten awareness that, hey, I'm sending my child to come home safe, to come home educationally better, emotionally better, because you would have, and also civically better, as well as behaviorally better, because you would have disciplined them with me in the structural proper way, right? To help create a better child, to be a better student, to be better people and pillars of this community. So you're right.
Right.
When it comes to education, I think we subconsciously have an awareness of, this is a safe space.
Right. And
A
so I
safe
think that
space.
the expectations that these matters, are not going to, shouldn't arise, aren't going to arise, but they do arise. And so they become extremely public and extremely crisis driven very, very quickly. So when you are mediating a case, that while you're inside the mediation room is, the rules of confidentiality apply, there may have already been
No,
headlines, public meetings, TV interviews, etc., going on. And it's very hard. Again, that's another aspect of managing the room, managing the emotion, managing the narrative, that people have adopted because they're very now ingrained in their headline, right? It's very hard for them to put that down and get to some type of compromise in a case, right? Once they've adopted those, those extreme, conflict positions in their four
no,
corners, their two corners.
it's their expectations, and their
Right,
expectations are set with is set through their worldview. Again, my education from when I was younger, again, because of the type of school I went to, there was a level of expectation that I mean, that was the thing. You're here by God, and God's. I'm telling you, and I'm thinking about it now. It was always this kai me. Chimera
right,
in Creole means, the nun's house, basically, or the mother's house.
right,
This is the house.
right,
So why are you disrespecting
right,
the house? Why are you embarrassing me in the house? So there was all this expectation, which means I can't even imagine if I told my mom something happened. In fact, you know what did happen? A few times I was harshly disciplined. Old school 1980s New York discipline, okay? The paddle room or something like that. My
right, right,
sister would be
right.
like, wait, you got paddled? You deserved it. Come here. Here's some
Yeah,
more.
that was old school. Doesn't work that way. But
Doesn't work
these
that way
but
no more.
these but these issues can get, they can escalate very quickly. And that's, getting back to our friend Mr. Pettis. We are if I can just do my little segue.
No, please, I really want to. In fact, we're going to wrap up right now, but I want to just. I'm going to share that brochure so they could either join the conversation, try to attend, get the information about it, get some resources, or if you don't mind,
No, I would really, really appreciate it, because I think it's very, very on topic with dealing, whether you're an advocate representing a school district, or whether you are representing a parent, teacher, etc. Um, to understand the dynamics of dealing with these matters. And we've called it interventions in catastrophic legal crises. And it's exactly what we're talking about here, where we have these very critical issues, very emotionally charged conversations around students, student safety, um, you know, um, uh, the conduct of the school district itself in dealing with parents, student safety, employees, and other, very, very important issues that affect the community as a whole. And how do you help? How do you, as an advocate, how do you, as a lawyer, navigate those, manage the public discourse, the litigation? Are we still on?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm just sharing
great.
the screen.
Thank you so much. The litigation aspect of it, and also the resolution. So there's a lot that's going to be discussed in terms of resolving these cases. Does anyone win if you go to litigation on these cases, and how and when to decide how to manage your client's matter, and get them resolved in a way that the community comes out. Mr. Pettis represented the Broward County School District in the tragedy of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas mass shooting. And so he knows a lot about addressing those kinds of issues. And one of the aspects that he's going to be discussing is, how do we win as a community when facing these issues, and what's your role as an advocate? And we're going to talk about resolution in all of these arenas. So it's going to be a very, very exciting small setting. So it's going to be like 15 to 20 people. So we're all going to get to interact. I wish you'd
How
come,
do you
Stan.
know? How do you
You
know
need to
it's only about
come.
20
You need
people?
to join us.
You know what? Hold on. I'm getting there. How do you know it's only going to be 20 people, 50, 20 people?
I have 20 spaces.
Oh, that's it?
Yep.
For Tuscany?
Yep. Now, if we've got overflow, I will make it happen. You know me, I'm resourceful. We also have the managing partner, the Milan, Italy managing partner, from the Boyes Schiller law firm, who, is internationally renowned. And so we're going to have a lot of really interesting dialogue, case studies. Scott Richardson has handled very high profile cases and a lot in the school setting, as well as other governmentals. And it's 14 Florida Bar CLE credits. And the best part is we're going to be in Tuscany having a really great time. It's a great setup for people, colleagues, and friends traveling together. It's going to be an intimate setting so that we can learn together.
November 2nd.
No, October 27th through November 2nd.
Yep. October 27th through November 24th. Sorry, 20th. Sorry, November 2nd, 2024. And it should be on the screen right now. Do you see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. In Tuscan, in Italy, which I've been and I love, and you just might be seeing me because
I would absolutely love it. I would welcome your participation because you've got a lot to add to the conversation, and it will be a lot of conversation. I think it's going to be extremely high, masterclass level, so that you're going to have a lot of great minds sharing a lot of great information.
I know I have a very strong connection to what happened at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. One, I was there last year. One of my friends is the actual vice principal of that school. One, two, because of that incident, I did do some education training through the ADL, Anti-Defamation League, and address that. where I was doing where the school board, as you know, is supposed to have armed guards now. So I
Right.
did the first cadre or several cadres of the training for those incoming private security guards for all public schools, middle and elementary school, where they're supposed to have an open carrying guard called a guardian program. But my portion was to teach on implicit bias training. So if they are to do something to eliminate the threat, there's a level of empathy, awareness that they must deal with, and implicit bias training. So from there, law enforcement within the school board, or law enforcement in law enforcement used within school systems is a little part of what I'm really endeared towards. So you might definitely see me there, because I want to definitely start doing more community-based mediation work, as well as engagement within various school boards, because as you identified, we're talking about your schools are the basis of it's the
Right.
your family, and you have the school. Those
Right.
two things are the bedrock of our community. And if you
Yeah.
have stronger home life, stronger
Right.
communication, which is a big part of what I do when I do divorce mediations, and I do, parenting issues or co-parenting issues. I focus on helping the parents deal with their communication, better communication and empathy, of course, and solving the issues for their children so they can create
Right.
better families. But then the education portion, which is the community thing. If you can
Right.
have those two things in a better checks and balances, and a better available resources, a better way to identify issues and respond to issues, and have better communication resources available to respond,
Yeah.
like mediators, like the advocates, like you said, the non-legal advocates that are available. Man, we could change so much,
Right.
identify so much, and heal so much.
Right.
Why
Right.
not? It's just like, why not? Why aren't we doing this on a regular
Yeah. No,
basis?
I think it can't be, I think we can't talk about this enough. And I think that leadership matters. So having people like Jean, yourself, Scott, Luigi, the guy, the Italian attorney. I mean, just having people who have this sense of the bigger picture in the conversation, I think is really critical to impacting change. So I'm really proud to be part of the conversation, and group discounts. Call
All
me.
right,
We'll
let's
talk.
go.
No, I mean it's a great setup for a group, and I think that it will make the conversation and the experience richer if we have, people who are kind of on the same wavelength. So I'm trying to get, the fun people, because we are going to have fun. Also, there's going to be a lot of fun, and it's right here in my neighborhood, so I know the area very well. We're going to have meeting with the mayor, local attorneys, local businessmen in Italy. So we'll have a segment on that, and then we're going to do a lot of, very authentic. This is not going to be, Perillo tours. We're going to do a lot of very authentic experiences, which is also part of that cultural exchange. So I think that's really part of the fun of it, is uh almost like a native.
All right, so let's wrap up. I've had you
Thank you.
this conversation. Oh my God, I have so many other avenues I gotta let me pinpoint and have a conversation about when it comes to
Yeah, let's do it.
this plan some more. I want to do this at least once. I'm not playing once a month. I want to have this conversation to assist those who want to become neutrals in the educational field, and as well as, because I have so many high school friends, people I've known for 30 plus years, that are in the education system, either administrative, district level. I have family that's on the city council boards, as well as just having a passion for helping organizations like the ADL or some other nonprofits, as well as my own, that's going to be starting on education or on better educating community-based mediations. That we need to have these kind of dialogues and conversations to say, hey, there are a list of people, there are groups of individuals whose passion is not just about getting their bills paid. It's not about just the occupation of being a mediator or being a neutral. It's about helping the communities and the families become stronger by having people who, this is a passion for them, helping guide communities to
Right.
build resources, having neutrals like you, me, and others that have a passion for finding a resolve. It's not about what we want, but
Yeah.
what does the community want, families want, and try to find that exchange, that line that can heal and help. So I'm down for that.
Well,
So
thank you. Thank you for letting me be part of it. It was my pleasure, and I look forward to more conversations with toothpaste.
yes, toothpaste conversation.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Stan. I really appreciate it. I'll follow up with you on some other stuff too.
Bye-bye. Have a
Thanks.
good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.